This is NDTV, and you're watching Classics.
Hello and welcome to Walk the Talk. I am Shekhar Gupta and my guest this week, one of the most famous bylines of our times, Tina Brown, editor of Tatler at 25?
Yes, 25. I was
25
a
is
mere
when people
young Turk.
People finish their internships, and then not just Tatler, then Vanity Fair, New Yorker, your own talk,
Yes, indeed.
and now the biographer of Diana.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel I've done magazines, I've done a monthly, I've done a weekly, I've done a book. Haven't done a newspaper, so that's the only thing I regret.
But you've done a TV show.
I had a TV show. Yes, it's true.
Yes.
I've done most of them now.
Yeah, and but times have changed. From times you took over Tatler and you changed Vanity Fair, and then you outraged people by changing the New Yorker, but successfully. To now, there was no YouTube, no Facebook then.
No, I mean, I think editing now has never been more complex, actually. I think it's a very, very hard thing for editors today to keep their focus.
Right.
Because they're being assailed from every direction by this ambient news that everywhere they go. And to keep that focus and to keep yourself aware of what the sort of priorities are, I think is very challenging.
But take us back to your times at Tatler at the ripe age of 25.
Well, I had this wonderful break, which was that Tatler was this tiny little magazine, and I was given the chance to edit it. And, my motto is if you don't have a budget, get yourself a point of view. I mean, there was only a staff of 12, but I picked people who just simply had a lot of attitude. And where there was no budget, we simply were enterprising, which I think is a great sort of challenge. And a good thing for young journalists, rather than join some big august organization where they're just basically, skivvying around being the intern, much better to take over something small where you just haven't really got any budget and you have to be inventive.
Or constantly complain about the fact that the other guys have so much money while I take the tube.
Exactly, that was the whole game. But we also had one big lucky break at Tatler, which is that the Princess of Wales story broke.
Right.
Princess Diana, Lady Di, became the great social story. We were the social magazine, and Diana was to the Tatler what O.J. Simpson in America was to cable news. I mean, in the sense that it was the big story, and we were right in the heart of it because it was a social magazine. So circulation really soared as we covered Lady Di and right up through the wedding and beyond. It was great fun.
And she never let you down.
She never let us down. Even to this day, she never let us down. So it was a wonderful, fun period. And then Condé Nast bought it because it was this little tiny, embryo, and it was then bought by the mighty Condé Nast American Publishing Company. And they had just begun Vanity Fair in New York. It had had 3 editors and it had failed. And so the chairman said, let's try to bring over this English girl who's put up circulation at Tatler, because Tatler had by that time had really soared and became, a big sort of chunky glossy. And he said, would I come?
You broke a few rules, even in British media, where royalty was never really given any immunity.
Yeah, well, Tatler was very irreverent. I mean, the whole idea of Tatler was that we would cover society, but we would do it with attitude. We would do it with fun. And we would, bring as well a lot of very good writers. I mean, I had terrific writers, such as the famous novelist, as he now is, Martin Amis, and the other famous novelist, Julian Barnes. And all these people were writing for Tatler when they were kind of kids, but they were good. And they were irreverent, and they were, extremely impertinent about royalty.
Tell us about some of the most outrageous things you did at Tatler, the rules you broke.
Well, we did, for instance, when the Princess of Wales became engaged, we did this whole sort of 12-page picture spread with it, using a Diana lookalike, putting her in outrageous situations. We had somebody dressed as the Queen, with her corgi dogs, sort of being the dogs terrorizing Diana. I mean, it was a sort of fun, sort of young Turkish thing to do. We had a lot of, for instance, we did a piece about Scotland, which was called North of the Border with the Thane of Cawdor, and we just went all the way around Scotland, just making merciless fun of all the kind of kilted, earls and dukes and duchesses there. We just had fun with everybody. We just made a lot of fun.
What was the most outrageous comment you heard?
Oh,
you had your critics.
I certainly did have a lot of critics. Somebody once wrote a piece about me saying that I was the worst social betrayer since the massacre of Glencoe in Scotland. But anyway, that was, today journalism is a lot more irreverent. Just that we were the first, to do it. And then, of course, at Vanity Fair, we did a lot of visually very exciting things. Like, we put Demi Moore on the cover, stark naked.
That was an iconic thing. In fact, that's an iconic thing in pop culture even now.
Yes,
1991.
The sight of that pregnant stomach
yes.
On the cover of Vanity Fair, it was a kind of an image that went all over the world. And the interesting thing is that now it's almost become like a rite of passage for a young movie
yes.
star who's pregnant to pose with her stomach showing. But at the time that we did it on Vanity Fair, it was an absolutely sensational thing. And I never really expected that. It's funny, sometimes when you do something, you think, oh, that'll cause interest, but you have no idea quite the explosion.
What kind of interest?
And that image of the pregnant Demi Moore must have been repeated a million times all over the world. Japan, South America, it was everywhere.
She was 7 months pregnant.
She was 7 months pregnant, and it was a wonderful celebrity cover, actually, I think, I have to say. And Annie Leibovitz took the picture, who's one of the great photographers of our time, really, and she did that picture. And
tell us a little bit about how it happened, how did you persuade her? Because most film stars would be loath to do something like this.
Well, it's interesting. Annie and I really wanted to have a cover photograph in the early 90s that basically made a statement that said the 90s are going to be different from the 80s. The age of glitz is over, and we want to have a more starkly sort of personal and simplistic sort of look to visual issues. And we were looking for that kind of story. And I said to her, we had this shoot scheduled with Demi Moore, had a movie coming out. And I said to Annie, let's try to show the fact she's pregnant. Don't let's hide that she's pregnant. Let's just take her, instead of just doing her face, which a lot of magazines obviously would have done because she was so big, let's really show her shape because of that, I was pregnant at the time. And I said, let's celebrate, womanhood. Let's make a feminist cover about, womanhood. But of course, Annie being Annie, she takes it one step further. At the end of the shoot, she says to Demi, shall I just take a picture of you without, anything? Because for you and Bruce Willis, her husband. And Demi loved that idea, and she posed for the picture. And then when Annie brought the picture in to show me, she said,
So there was no prior preparation?
No, there wasn't, but of course it was taken just for Demi. So Annie came in with the picture, and she said, look what I did at the end. Isn't this great? And I said, you've got to persuade her to let us use it. We have to have this picture. We must use this picture, not the one that, not the dress picture. And actually, to her credit, Annie got Demi to go along with it. And now, of course, it's become iconic. I think people remember Demi for that picture more than any movie that she ever took.
Absolutely.
So credit to her that she did it.
Breaking rules has been a habit with you. I don't know how much you trust Wikipedia, but sometimes stuff is so interesting you shouldn't let facts confuse you. Were you expelled from boarding schools thrice?
Yes, I was. I was thrown out of school.
So Wikipedia is right.
Wikipedia is right, but I wasn't thrown out for doing anything like, smoking cigarettes or taking drugs or drinking. I was always thrown out for being, disruptive, for being rebellious, for being, insubordinate, which I think I've continued to be in journalism.
Well, Wikipedia is right on one fact that you were thrown out thrice, but is it
Yes.
right on one of the facts, on one of the reasons for your expulsions? Did you describe one of your teachers with a bosom?
Yes,
that
I
was
said
like an
yes.
unidentified flying object?
It's true. The headmistress, I wrote in my diary that she had a bosom like an unidentified flying object. But today we would sue her for invasion of privacy. We would sue her for, suppressing free speech.
And how did she find your diary?
She went and read it. She was a big snoop. And I think that she should have been fired. But anyway, we left. But my father was always completely supportive. My parents always used to have the same line. They would say, how tragic that you failed with this immensely interesting girl.
And what happened the other two times?
Oh, the other time I led a demonstration because they said we could only change our underwear 3 times a week. So I led a demonstration on the lacrosse pitch at the time, and I had 40 girls marching up and down saying,
We want to change our underwear every day.
Yes, saying absolutely. We said the slogan was knickers out, 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 knickers in, in.